So thanks for joining us on Next Level Up. Most companies in logistics are still optimizing workflows, but what happens when the real problem isn't the workflow, it's the decision? Today I'm joined by Chris Condon, founder of Aircon, a company rethinking how freight forwarders actually operate. Not another tool, not another dashboard, but what he calls the decision layer. Chris, it's great to have you.
John, thanks for having me, and I'm excited to have this chat with you today.
Yeah, dude, our first call, it's me too. Everybody in the audience, it's going to be a great call. All right. So before Aircon, right, you spent your whole career in freight, FedEx,
I did.
Expedite, etc. Is there something about the industry that drew you to it?
Well, well, maybe. It's kind of interesting. Is I grew up. My parents were executives or whatnot, worked in the corporate world, but they're dairy farmers, right? So they like doing things with their hands. And I wasn't a very good student. So early in my career, I was a forklift driver, right? Unloading ocean containers. And my parents were very disappointed in me that I wasn't continuing my education. So I've been in the industry my entire career. I love it. I love how it affects people. I love how it, there's always a new challenge. And today is just no different, right? The challenge is just different today than it was 25 years ago.
So go into the CV. I get it. School wasn't like number one on the plan for you, and you worked your way up. So where was it after the forklifts? What was the next?
So forklift. I went. That was a company called Tower Group International that got bought by FedEx Trade Networks. So then from there, I went to Expeditors, and again, really in the warehouse distribution side of things. They moved me from Seattle to El Paso to take over that operation, and we lost our number one account. Within 2 or 3 weeks of me being there, we were notified that 90% of our revenue was going away, which was a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? Because obviously not having revenue is a problem, but it also taught me how to understand P&Ls, real costs, what is value creation for the client, and what really, I don't know how to say this in a normal way, but it really made me focus on what's important to the customer, right? So not what they hear in the media. Like I set up a VMI there for consumer electronics, what we call a VMI, right? So vendor managed inventory, and it was really the first, what do you call it? Like e-commerce, right? If you remember back when Dell, had this great business plan, right? Because they're taking your money, they're not paying their vendors for 90 days, so they're really making money on the float,
on the cash, yeah, right?
Yes, yeah. And so like I had everybody in there, everybody that came to me in El Paso was like, hey, we want a VMI. We want a VMI. Well, and that taught me that like, it's not what people ask, it's why they're asking it, right? So understanding some of the incentives on why, like, hey, their boss said, we need to be like Dell, right? Or be like Mike. For the way to say it, right?
I mean, people love success, right? So they're going to try and mimic it anywhere they can.
I think there's a saying, right? There's nothing more flattering than imitation, right?
Yeah. Imitation is the best being flattering.
But it was inventory control, right? I mean, that's really what the work was, right? How do you take care of goods, which is really cash, right, in a different form, and move it along the supply chain. But then I learned early on, or mid-career, mid-2000, I guess, is that I was not going to be promoted within that company because they're really an air freight company. So I asked my boss at the time, could I take over the export department, right? So you could air and ocean export. And I just fell in love. It is so much, not that it's better than distribution, but it's faster, it's more creative. And if there's a problem, you can solve it quickly, right? In distribution or warehousing or order fulfillment, the problem shows up today, but it might have been something that happened 9 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. The
bad receipt or right.
Right? All the 1,000 variables that are too slow to change. I mean, it's like the Titanic, unfortunately.
That's right. That's right. And so from there, we turned that around. We went from made that department very successful, and then I just get to a point where from a personality standpoint, I'm not wasn't satisfied. Like I like you're busy. but you're not really like doing, like you're not solving real problems anymore. Like,
Yeah, it's
yeah, I've
much
already had that
fulfilled.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been there.
Yeah. I've had that a couple times in my career now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then I went on my own. I started up with a couple of business partners, really kind of a temp. It was kind of a hybrid between a temp warehouse distribution and trucking um,
Yeah.
play. But it was really the idea behind that was, how do you align the labor with the actual outcome of what you're trying to do versus a stereotypical temp company that says, hey, I'll give you bodies and charge
Yeah.
you, whatever markup that is. So rule number one in business, when you go out, don't go into business with friends. That doesn't normally end well. So
Good way to lose friends.
it is absolutely a way to lose friends, and particularly when you don't have the same incentives on what you want to be long term, right? If it's a lifestyle business or
I mean, my first exit was they were like, well, we might lose the company if bad things. I'm like, but we have enough customers, that's not going to happen, right? It wasn't like you guys where probably one customer lost your 90% and that has real impact. But I'm like, that's when I learned, well, the one guy's super risk averse. So he doesn't want to go even further in, even though to me, I'm like, there's no more further in than bankruptcy, like, right? From my perspective. But to your point, it's like, it's just what everybody else wants. And to get alignment, even with two people is tough. And with three was friggin' impossible. So I get it.
yeah, it's interesting because I actually think three, we're at like five now on our executive team at Aircon.
Yeah.
We're for the most part, we're very aligned. We're very like, we know what the vision is and what our mission is for the freight forwarder.
Yeah.
But we all have different paths on how to get there, right? Like from a priority perspective.
Right.
And so that's one thing I've learned is like, it's not like, we have to make a decision. We make a decision fast, you move forward, right? And once we leave this room, we're on the same page. And if not,
Yeah, 100%. Dude,
we diverge.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's what kills you. And lessons learned, right? So that's the last question I'm going to ask on your past in a second. But to finish this point, I now know what to go into it with, right? To make sure that alignment exists and there's exits, pre-exit, right? So it's like, here's the way I'm going to buy back your thing, however that's going to work. And that's what my question was going to be. Even in your industry, like that's something that only comes from experience, right? Ass and chair time. What are some of the things and kind of building into Aircon, like you've only were able to learn because you were in it, right? You were in the slog sometimes.
Well, that's a heated question because I do believe you have to have, you said seat in the pants. I call it windshield time or whatever word you want. You can't really learn it until you get the scars from it, right?
Yeah. You can get the concepts, but you won't.
Yeah.
You won't really know it till you're at 4,000 hours, right? You're like, oh,
that's right.
Now.
It's like, oh, that's why we did not want to do it that way. Oh, yeah. And the biggest thing I've learned.
Yeah.
Well, and agreeance isn't like when people say, hey, yeah, I agree or I understand, that doesn't mean they agree and they understand. Is another thing you've learned, right? It's like, we've mapped this out. We have a document. We've talked about it. Do you understand it? Yes. Yeah, that's not, you can't accept that as the answer. You have to let them play it back in their own words or their own lens, if you will. To make sure that it landed well.
Yeah,
that was the point.
I tell people to recreate it. Like, it's like, you tell me what I just told you.
Yeah.
Because people always, they tell me I got Headlees because, they don't understand really what I said. Well, then I'm like, if you don't understand, I'm like, trust me, I'm trying to be as clear as possible. Like, I don't know how to make it any more clear. So you got to either ask me a question or say something that I can go, oh, hold on, that's where we're going, one of these deals.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. And I also think, from again, lessons learned from, this is my third step or third stop of being a CEO or a president, whatever title you want to put there.
Dude in charge.
And the buck stops with you. right?
Yeah,
And
right.
at the end of the day,
Yeah,
everybody looks for you to make that decision. And as a collaborative person, right, someone that's played, multiple team sports, and
yeah, yeah,
it's always been collaborative.
yeah,
Well, to get stuff done, you got to make a decision to move on, right? There's only so
yeah.
much negotiation and/or you know, uh, we don't need to know it all. We need to know enough to take that next step.
Yeah, it's great. I call it creative alignment sometimes. It's like, look,
Yeah,
you're gonna have to, and exactly what you said, like in the room, blood, sweat, and tears, anger, you can call me a stupid asshole, like whatever it takes. I don't care. But as soon as we leave this room, we're all aligned. Because that's why I don't love, I stop around my companies that I work with are around, 100, 150 mil, because beyond that, you really get into those like fiefdom, because, people, so you'll be in a meeting with 12 people, everybody doing that head nod, they're all there, and then what you don't know is three of them are going to stab you in the back 5 minutes later because they actually have they want your thing to fail so they can get their thing to go.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
I think that absolutely happens. I'm not convinced yet that's intentional.
yeah,
Though it may appear intentional.
yeah.
I
I
want to
might take
keep
a little
enough
first
faith in
lead. You're right. I can try and detach from that. Yeah.
I told one of our co-founders, Earl Wakefield, and he's an industry guy, right? He was a gateway manager for one of the top 10 largest freight forwarders. It's actually who I learned the operational side of air cargo. And when I asked him to join Aircon, I said, Earl, I won't intentionally screw you, but you may get screwed, right? So know that it may come, right? But it's not my intent that, hey, I'm going to take you away from this high-paying job to come do this startup with me. That we have no money. At the time we weren't funded, right? I was bootstrapping
Yeah.
it, and to be fair, we're not even doing that business anymore, right?
Yeah.
So that was the whole tech-enabled wholesaler side because of uh, what we knew from the market at the time. This was before LLM, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And so he kind of got screwed. Now he's obviously transitioned with us, right? And he's obviously of tremendous value in terms of knowing how the
Yeah.
airline work and how the truckers work and how forwarders think and all that stuff. But it's a mental shift that the entire industry, and I think the entire world, is shifting on how they view value versus cost.
Mhm.
And I just see that with Earl a lot, right? I love the guy. I think he's a phenomenal, great human, knows his stuff, right? But
Yeah.
we all have to shift as the world changes. And so again, he got
100.
screwed a little bit and get back on the horse.
Yeah, I'm 100%. I mean, I'm looking at AI, and I, of course, and as a tech guy, I'm using it every day. And, I'm like, what I'm doing? I'm training my replacement, which, to your point, that probably still 3 to 5 years on the low side and maybe 10, and I'll be retired and I won't give a shit on the other side of it. But to your point, you got to look at what the trends are to get retooled, right? That's basically what
Yeah.
I'm looking at. Otherwise, I'm going to be flat-footed when all of a sudden people are like, thanks, we don't need you anymore. We got Claude and his
That's
team.
that absolutely fair point, right? Like, and again, I think as the world changes with what AI can do, I don't like to use the word AI a lot because I think it gets, I think people's understanding of AI is
Yeah.
just off. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, fair.
It's okay. It's okay to say that.
I don't
It
want to
might be a
offend
little off
anybody.
target.
Yeah. But what it really does is it allows the things the decisions or the knowledge to be at your fingertips when you need to make a decision. But it doesn't remove the relationship with people. It doesn't
Nope.
remove the assets that you're, the value that you're creating as a person and or a company. It
That's
doesn't
correct.
change that, right? It just
It just
changes how you're incentivized by it, right?
Yeah. 100%. All right. So perfect segue. Give me the elevator pitch on Aircon, what it is, and let's talk about, that lovely startup and where it's going and
Sure.
how you're leveling that
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, so Aircon is the decision layer for air cargo. So right now we have a quoting agent, but the thesis or what the value that we're bringing is we allow freight forwarders to know what they're committing to at the time of quote, right? So
Yeah.
margins, is the route feasible, those type of things. And then it's traceable as it goes back. So who made the decision to quote it, why they quoted it this way. So again, aligning assets with the decision maker and moving the decision closer to the buyer, not in the middle between the buyer and seller, right? For international trade, right? A lot of these small to medium sized freight forwarders have a hard time showing value beyond quote, right? Beyond the rate.
Yeah,
And
the cost.
I was
Trying to
yeah, it's a cost, right? And every freight forwarder, you know, I had my own freight forwarding business that I sold in 2020.
Yeah.
We all say the same thing, right? We're not price driven, we're customer service, and we're just better customer service. Well,
Yeah.
I used to tell my salespeople all the time, it's like, well, how do you validate that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, obviously over time, right? You have a relationship with a person that's making that decision, but to get someone that doesn't know, you gotta be able to validate and demonstrate that value. And I would, from an Aircon perspective, that's our wedge between everybody else. Like there's people that say they can quote, sure, and they might make, at least the ones I've seen, we do AI for quoting. Well, most of it is a network or a workflow automation, not a market or intelligence across the globe, across assets, across people that you don't know, those type of things. So that's really why I call it the network effect, right? As it echoes out, it creates transparency for service.
Yeah, and like you said, that's why I said it was a good segue for the AI side, right? Is that's where the human creativity, decision making still can't be replicated.
Can't. But it can on 80 to 90% of the decisions that freight forwarders make on air freight every day, right? So like there's common routes, right? Like common capacity, like, we have customers send in a quote, or their customer sends them a quote. We're inside their mailbox. We digest it, we structure it, we put it into this process, blah, 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 and respond within a minute or two. And then if we can't respond to it based on your guardrails that you've already set up or your decision rights that you've already set up, then we send it to the operator to make the decision, right?
Right.
And that's really the time that the operator gets back. Now, in theory, our thesis is, and what we're hearing from our customers is that now they have time now to go have a conversation with the client. Because one, we give you data on what they're actually doing and when, where, and how. But two, what's the expectation of the shipper? What's the expectation of the buyer? Maybe they don't need it there in 3 days. Maybe they need it there faster than ocean. So put it on a different carrier, maybe a courier carrier like a DHL, UPS, FedEx, et cetera. It's a second priority over parcel, right? But it'll get there in 7 to 10 days. More often than not. So those are the things that excite me about it, is the ability to really be the intelligence for the operator to show their value, not just the cost, because again, the cost is what it is.
Well, I'm going to ask a question about that, but what I hear in all that is exactly what I got from our first chat was your value is letting them extend their value beyond just, oh, I need to get something somewhere. Like, yeah, you do, right? That is the key. And yet you're breaking out of the day-to-day to actually provide them the value to their customers. And then they're like, well, where'd this come from? Oh, Chris and his team.
Yep, that's right.
Here.
Yeah, that's a big, obviously we think that's our main value prop, right? And why we're so passionate about what we're building is that we truly see, it's not just about making money for Aircon, which obviously is important. I'm not driven by money. Not that I don't need money, but I don't really need any more money. That's not what drives me. What drives me is how do we add value to our customers in a manner that they can grow and we can be a part of that they wouldn't been able to do without us. And Aircon really started, I mean, obviously, again, I started as a tech wholesaler, but that's how it started. Was I had a freight forwarding company. I had relationships with, Microsoft, Foxconn, Cisco, blah, 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 blah. And I could compete, or our company could compete. We didn't win all the time, but we could compete in every other mode of transportation and every service level that freight forwarders do, from trucking, warehousing, customs brokers, et cetera, et cetera. except for air freight.
Hmm.
And part of that is because it's just sheer volume of consolidation, risk tolerance. Like I could have, like Microsoft, for example, I don't know how much tonnage they move, but let's say it's
Well,
a lot,
it's a lot.
right?
A lot.
Right. Um,
Technical term, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, but understanding how the game is played operationally in terms of the airlines, in terms of the trucker, you have to have freight to get the rate.
Yes.
And to get the freight, you got to get the freight, right? It's a weird chicken egg
Yeah, yeah. It's like
dynamic
a catch 22. Yeah.
for sure. But the challenge with that is it's a risk tolerance. Like to your point, like, hey, if I'm a multi-billion-dollar company, I'm willing to take a risk for, $1 million or $2 million, knowing that I can get 15 to 20 later down the road, right? And this happened in real life for me when I was at a larger freight forwarder. Um, we're an approved supplier, so I go into the customer, and it was my first sales job selling air freight. And the guy's name was Javier, and he goes, "Chris, I would love to use you, but your rate is too high." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, I know who I work for, so like this should be a
Yeah.
problem." And then I saw the rate, and it was like whatever it was. Let's use the number 70 cents.
Yeah.
At the time, the fuel surcharge that I was being charged from the airlines was $1.10 a kilo. So it
Yeah.
didn't matter what I was buying it at. My fuel surcharge was above 70 cents, right? And so we lost a lot of money for 2 or 3 months until we could play the game with the volume with the airlines. And
Yeah.
that's really the when a light bulb went off in my head. It's like, okay, it's not just service. Like the volume gives you leverage that
Yeah.
these small to medium sized guys don't have.
No, you just can't do it, right? So I'm going to ask maybe a hot take, right? So if to your point, if we use your past with the company that lost 90% of its revenue, let's say that was from one bad decision, right? You said this on our first call, right? That
Yeah.
can not only just kill future revenue because you piss somebody off, they go somewhere else because they no longer see the value, right? Could even cripple a company. So here's my question. Is cost actually the least important variable in logistics and people just don't know it?
I personally believe cost is. I want to say yes, but with a caveat, right? Because
Yeah.
the part that we don't measure is what is that lost revenue that because we lost that customer, right? And in a freight forwarding, like when I was growing up in the freight forwarding world, particularly after I left the big boys, right, was I'll give you an opportunity, but it's the worst opportunity you can possibly get, right? It's airline seats going to somewhere in middle of BFE, right?
Yeah.
That nobody does well, but so we'll give it to you. Oh, and by the way, you got to do it cheaper than this guy, right?
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, that's the only measurement we have today that the buyers pay attention to. It's the same way in trucking, right? If you think of like, during COVID, trucking has a relatively easy barrier to entry, right? From an asset, like you can get a loan, you can lease it, get a CDL, et cetera. And when rates are high, there's massive influx of people doing it.
Yeah, because they're like, hey, here we go.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, I can make $500 a day, and all I got to do is drive. And obviously, I'm oversimplifying that, but the point to that is that it's the market drives that based on buyers' behavior, and then they complain that they don't have service because they've driven down the price, right? And so I don't know how to measure that yet. Today, I spend a lot of time reflecting on like how do you define the category of service, right, and the real value created because of service.
Yeah.
And then the risk factor, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was in marketing and same thing. You can kind of see the funnel because, I mean, to your point, you're going to generate revenue. There's all sorts of ancillary ways to try and measure that. But I get the conundrum of how do you actually tell that this interaction just increased orders for this guy by 30%.
That's right.
Right.
Well, and then on the international side, it's kind of interesting, especially when you start thinking about the small to medium sized freight forwarders that are, are only in country, right? There's margin stacking that happens, right? And they're not really debating on service, right? It's rate first, and then they tell you what the service level is most of the time, right? So part of the thing that Aircon is creating is this isn't built yet, so I'm not gonna. It's not fully built yet, I should say.
Yeah.
It allows you to then give percentages of on time of this particular carry on this Friday to meet the carrier cutoff on the gateway or the airline cutoff on a Friday. You can't use XYZ trucker because they fail 80% of the time. Buyer, if you want, pay an extra $100 for ABC trucker that has a 92% on time delivery that meets the cutoff. So again, understanding the expectation, that relationship with the buyer is what we believe is going to change the world.
Awesome. I just want to pause for a second. We'll have to edit this one out, but are you good for 6, 7 more minutes? Okay, great.
Yep.
As I was fearing, I should have asked you at the beginning. I'm like, we'll probably be able to bullshit for 3 hours because
No, I love it.
me too. And by the way, I do want to come back. Like, I would love offline to work with you on that question because it's bothered. Shouldn't say bothered me. It's been a value spot for me in my brain for almost 30 years now. Like,
Yeah,
how do you,
no.
because again, in marketing, they've got channels, they've got all sorts of ways to sort of do that. But part of the problem is it's like operational supply chain. There's
Oh,
no information going from this step to this step to tell you, anyhow, well, we
well,
can
no,
talk more.
yeah, I absolutely love that. And to that point, I think we've been misled over the last, whatever years it was, that data is the most important thing. There's value, and there is, don't get me wrong, there is value in
Yeah.
data. But it's evidence of what the data told us in real time is where the value comes in. It's not
Correct.
after the fact. Like everything's 2020, right? When you
Yeah.
when you look back in the rear, it's like, oh yeah, you should have done this. Well, yeah, but at the time, I made this decision because of this reason, and these were the constraints that I had at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I
I
think
mean,
we do that a lot.
yeah, to your point about data, like so many people, and this took me even myself a couple years, which I was like gobsmacked when it hit me. Lagging indicators are great. That's a scoreboard, right? We need to
Mhm.
know leading, like I don't need to know. I need to know. I'm like Otani. I need to know the next pitch is probably going to be a curveball, right? Not not after I've finished, like so I can actually
Right.
knock the damn thing out of the park, right? Whatever that.
That's right. Yeah, my
Anyhow,
CTO. Funniest thing you bring curveball. My CTO actually wrote the. He had actually got a cease and desist letter from an MLB because he could predict the next pitch in the MLB baseball game at a 95% accuracy.
wow.
Right. So no longer can wear a smartphone. And this is before the Houston, the drumming and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But it kind of validates or confirms that our tech is so much more advanced than what we have a use case to use it for yet.
yeah.
Right. So again, there's data out there. And obviously baseball is one of those where we track everything, right? So
The data sport, right? Like,
yeah, that's right. And we're not that predictable or unpredictable as humans, right?
yeah,
Like we think think we're real creative and we're different from the generation before or generations before.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we are, don't get me wrong, but like it's pretty predictable.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, we'll talk more about that. This one's a personal question for me. So the first exit I had was Paragrid. We did IT for small companies, basically white gloves, because they needed IT, but they didn't want to have anything to do with it, right? Just make it work. So the reason that it's a parallel for you is I think you get labeled as like a TMS, a wholesaler, a rating engine, etc. We kind of had, this marketing guy blew me away. He's like, here's the difference. Ford doesn't have to tell you what a car's like or what MPG or seats or like you guys are going to have to explain yourself because this was all cloud. By the way, this is 20 years ago. So it was right as Microsoft started paying money for cloud to say
Yeah.
cloud stuff. But we were doing cloud stuff right at that kind of super early adopter level, right? And so we had to explain why we weren't IT guys or this, and and it's like there's corollaries. Obviously, we're in that industry, but for you, what's been the cost of either that misunderstanding in these early days? How do you explain something that doesn't necessarily have a category yet?
That is, we haven't quite nailed all that down yet.
Yeah,
But it is consistency. It kind of talked what we talked about earlier that, we got 5 people in the room that have very
yeah,
different skill sets. But are we all using the same language? Are we all using the same
yeah,
vernacular as we do? Because
right.
the more, like, we've been talking about orchestration and decision layer for a year and a half, right? Well, now you start seeing it like manifest this last year. The panelists, they're all starting a decision, like let it make the decision, the orchestration. I'm like, okay, you guys all laughed at me when I said that 2 years ago, right? But to your point, I think it's very similar to the internet, the 90s, right? Like everybody knows that they have to have internet, right? Like today, like we can't imagine not having internet today,
Yeah,
at least
right.
in the US, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, AI is just that faster in my mind, right? And I think the challenge is that we push it to the consumer, the individuals, before we have a business use case for it.
right.
Right? Because again, it's just data at that point. Like people ask questions, like people are dating it now and all this other stuff because they're, those type of things. But there is real use cases that improve business and creates value without removing the people. I think that's the other misconception that I believe, like, is from a media perspective. AI should not replace people. It should just change what they're doing and
Yeah.
how they're doing it. Right now, it may affect engineers, right? Like coding and all, like the code stuff is pretty cool. Like that.
But I mean, I'm still not sure. Like, I don't know if anybody can actually tell the future because all it means is it frees me up from a lot of the mundane crap. Like to me, across the board, it's like 40-50% of the shit none of us want to do anyhow.
Right.
It's taken care of.
Right.
And then it lets us, to your point, I'm a big Gay Hendricks guy. It's like my zone of genius. My zone of genius is solving problems, not writing
That's right.
code.
That's right.
That's a tool, right? It's like, so for me, I still think this is true. AI is like the power saw to a normal saw, right?
Perfect.
It didn't replace
Yep.
carpenters,
That's right.
right? It just
That's right.
made their jobs way easier
Yep.
and faster. And, of course, losing fingers, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I don't. I'm with you on that one. I don't think AI. Again, I think it's a media valuation push from kind of how this world works in terms of cash, right? And who gets valuation, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But people that I believe, if we use AI blindly, like marketing is easy, right? Like outreach. I think people just ignore it now, right? So it's gonna. My hope, I guess, I should say in this way, is I see a future where sales is no longer email or text or phone. It's going to go back to door. Like I gotta do, is this guy real or this girl real, right?
Yeah.
For me to have a conversation with. Because even video, like I was interviewing a couple engineers 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was clear that it was AI, and I'm like,
Really?
wow, like it looked like a person. They were. It wasn't in the U.S. The person wasn't. They were in Europe, somewhere in Europe, but you could tell there was just some things that were thing, and then you go check them out on other areas. It's like that's not the same person that I just talked to, right? Their name, all that kind of good stuff.
Their
so
voice.
yeah, it's just wild to me. But to your point, I don't think it replaces people. I actually think it's a kind of a force multiplier for people to really have relationships again with people again. Because we say it all the time. People do business with people. And if you don't know the people you're doing business with, that's a problem.
Yeah, 100%. And my other sneaky suspicion is exactly what we talked earlier. It's going to also free us up and the leadership teams of the world to be working on actual use case problems, value addition, instead of, I mean, dude, right now, I have one client, I've tracked 65% of their time goes just to maintenance, just to keep the machine running.
Yeah,
right? So it's like that's what AI is going to do, right? It's going to treat
1,000%.
now you can actually turn these smart dudes and dudettes into great. What's our future? How do we actually move
That's
this
right.
thing forward? How do we address these three things that have been on the docket for 4 years because we never have the time, right? So it'll be an
That's a good point. No, I think
it'll
you're on
be
the right track
interesting.
there.
I think that's my hope because last thing I want to do is be uh completely retooling at 50 58 or
Well,
whatever. But
yeah, but to your
we
point,
got to
right? I
do.
mean, it's the, hey, we built it. We built it at the particular point in time it made sense and it worked. And now
Yeah,
the environment changed or the thing changed, but it's not a whole totally rebuild. It's, hey, I got this API or this whatever code or whatever just needs to be tweaked now. And AI is really, really good at that
yeah,
and allows then that cost to go down, but the value to continue to go up.
yeah, 100%. It's the same thing. Like if airplanes disappeared to drones, Aircon's just going to go to DroneCon, right? I mean,
Correct.
you guys
Correct.
figure like at the end of the day, it doesn't really negate what our experience and knowledge is, but that
No,
we'll see.
no, without a
We'll,
doubt. And and just I'm not sure if you know or are aware of this, but most cargo moves on passenger aircrafts, right?
yeah,
So, yeah, so it doesn't matter if it's a pilot or a drone. It doesn't matter. Cargo's got to go somewhere.
yeah, it's get it in A to B, right?
Yeah, and
Right.
people move air freight based off of a lot of different things, right? Not just cost, right? It's security, it's the
Yeah,
environment of the product, and there's bad actors in that, right? So
yeah,
how do you control that from a government perspective is pretty cool.
it is cool. So let's fast forward a couple years. Let's say Aircon's, knocking out of the park. Freight decisions are getting better, et cetera. What do you think changes in those organizations? What does that unlock for those companies? In the same way we're kind of talking about AI, right? Like,
Yeah, from a freight forwarder perspective, I think it allows them to understand where their value is in the relationship, like with the shipper or the buyer. I think that's a massive unlock for them. I do think the industry is going to get smaller. Not. I mean, right now everybody's kind of consuming everybody. Like TSV's bought everybody,
yeah,
and
it's
Kuganado,
always
blah blah.
yeah,
I personally think it's going to get smaller, meaning more boutique type style, like because rates won't be the issue.
yeah,
It'll be service commitments like, do you know the right people? Do you know the right service providers to provide the actual service? For the airlines or the asset holders, I think it's a better commitments to them, right? So this is all behavioral type stuff, is why we got these issues, right? In a lot of areas, right?
yeah,
Like they have dynamic pricing for airline today. They book it before they actually have the freight, which causes then that airline to block off or allocate space that doesn't really exist yet. So if we can align that, or when we align that with actual shipments, now the airline can actually have better data to have better revenue and actually be more capacity driven
yeah,
versus sales or spray and pray type scenario of here's my rate for everybody, use it, because today they don't
yeah.
care.
I hope somebody shows up.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, and then same with the trucking, right? So you think about all the different things that happen in the trucking world is, here's a price from A to B, but A to B doesn't tell you exact date, the exact time you need it. It just tells
Yeah,
you if you quote it, I'll honor the rate. It doesn't say I'll honor the rate and actually commit to it, right?
right.
And so we believe, hopefully by the end of June, is part of that process or quoting process is, hey, you said the price was $1 or $100, whatever it is. It needs to be there by X date. Do you commit? Right. And so the AI will learn, again, going back to that, the what we're building from a booking standpoint, it'll learn
Right.
what carrier actually does good on what days and what they commit to. So that's
Yeah.
really, I think, the value for, I think there's a win-win for everybody involved in the chain, right? For, again, the trucker, airline, the freight forwarder, and then ultimately the buyer. But we don't deal with the buyer, or like we don't deal with that stuff today. We don't have any plans to deal with that stuff today. But we do have some plans, if you start thinking about 2-3 years in the future, it's like, how do we make that more streamlined from a regulatorial standpoint, right? A TSA compliance perspective. How do we make that more compliant and an easier enforceable booked quote, right? So again, I can pick it up today and have it on that flight tomorrow based on blah 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 blah, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I think it makes it faster and more what they're really committing to. And the freight forwarder doesn't go away. Like their value again isn't necessarily the actual movement of the cargo. It's knowing how, where, when, and again, understand the expectation of the client. But the one thing I think we need to get over as an industry is that risk of taking a chance on someone doesn't have a big brand, right? So
Yeah.
nobody gets fired by choosing FedEx, right? Nobody gets fired by picking UPS, but they do get fired by picking Chris, right?
Yeah.
I don't know Chris, right? Right. And so
if I had $1 every time and as a technologist, I got that, same thing. It's like nobody got fired for SAP. It's like, okay, but I've never seen an SAP engagement ever work the first time. It's always like the second team. So it's just like, I don't know how they didn't get fired, because if I proposed a $7 million project and it didn't go well, like, to your point, like we'd be in court, right? These guys are just like, I guess we'll go to the next guy, spend another $4 million. What's the big deal?
Yeah, well, and like in our industry, in the freight forwarding industry, that happened. One of the largest, I'm going to call it ERPs for lack of a better way to say it, or TMS. They just changed their pricing overnight, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? You're too embedded with them to get out. It's part of your workflow.
Change. Yeah,
right?
That's great. Oh, Chris, this is awesome. What stood out to me, it's not just about logistics. Like, it's driving good decisions. It's driving relationships, not only inside your organization, but with with your customers and their customers. So I really appreciate you coming on, and wish you and Aircon all the best.
Hey, John, I appreciate the time, appreciate the invite, and let's connect on that later discussion.
We will.